The US, also known as the world's greatest bully, thinks that by imposing sanctions on any country that goes against its ideals, principles, and interests, it would be able to bend that country to its will. But the fact is that the US sanctions and domineering policies have only succeeded in making these countries detest the US and find ways to thrive without the influence of the US. In today's video, we look at two countries that have been subjected to economic sanctions from the United States, but have continued to thrive, and these nations just pulled a slick move that's an absolute game changer. As you know, the global financial scene is dominated by the US and the West, and this has made it very easy for the West to try and break the economic strength of countries that go against their interest. However, Iran and Russia, both members of the BRICS alliance, recently made an announcement that will shake the current financial system. So what did they do? Russia and Iran just finalized the integration of their national payment system. Now, why is this important? By linking their national payment systems, Russia and Iran have taken a significant step towards enhancing their economic cooperation and bypassing the US sanctions. If you recall, after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the US imposed sanctions on Russia in response, and part of the sanctions included cutting Russia out of the SWIFT international payment messaging system. The SWIFT system, created in 1973, was established to facilitate the exchange of interbank messages containing secure payment and transfer information for settling international transactions. Iran was also cut off from the SWIFT system as part of targeted sanctions in 2012 and again in 2018 due to Tehran's continuing pursuit of a nuclear program. In addition, Iran was targeted for supplying Russia with drones, which it says were delivered before the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. However, the interesting thing is that even before it was cut out of the SWIFT system, Russia had already prepared itself in case something like that ever happened. In 2014, the Russian National Bank created an alternative to the commonly used Western financial messaging network, SWIFT, called the System for Transfer of Financial Messages, SPFS. It was created as a reaction to Western financial institutions' effort to limit Russia's ability to participate in international financial transactions in reaction to Russia's annexation of Crimea and occupation of eastern Ukraine. So, when the US finally cut off Russia from the SWIFT system in 2022, it quickly switched to the SPFS and even encouraged other countries and financial institutions to use it. As of January 2024, about 557 financial institutions and firms in 20 countries had connected successfully to SPFS. Now, after the invasion of Ukraine, trade between Russia and Iran began to increase, and it eventually led to a series of meetings between the central banks of Iran and Russia and plans to combine the Russian SPFS with the Iranian CPOM system, which will allow the transfer of financial messages. According to the authorities in Iran, the connection between the two countries is functional and will allow the central banks of both countries to perform direct transactions with each other in their national currencies, the Russian ruble and the Iranian rial, and also reduce their reliance on the dollar and the Western-dominated SWIFT system. So, right now, all of Iran's several dozen financial institutions can connect with Russian banks, in addition to more than 100 banks from 13 other, mostly Eurasian countries that have access to SPFS. However, the best part of this integration is that Western sanctions cannot affect it. This move is a strategic effort by both nations to mitigate the impact of international sanctions and strengthen their economic ties. Since 2022, Russia and Iran have grown incredibly closer, collaborating to build financial structures independent of the West. A few weeks ago, the Iranian government stated that Russia, with $2.7 billion, was by far the largest investor in the country. Currently, the first trade transactions using this system have already taken place, and both countries are optimistic about its potential to massively increase their annual bilateral trade. The plan is to most likely double it from $4 billion to $8 billion. Now, Russia's alternative payment system also has payment cards for regular users, called MIR. The Russian central bank began issuing the Mir card in 2015, which is currently in 50% of payment card transactions in Russia, filling in the role previously served by Western electronic payment systems that exited the Russian market in 2022. But it's not only Russia that uses this card. The Mir is now fully accepted in Venezuela, Cuba, Belarus, the breakaway republics of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and at some banks in other former Soviet republics and Vietnam. Several countries in the Middle East and Africa have expressed interest in joining the payment system, despite U.S. sanctions targeting the issuing authority. So, as part of the integration between Russia and Iran, both countries have also agreed to use the Mir payment system, and according to the governor of the Russian Central Bank, the project has now entered the operational stage. In the first stage, which is set to begin on August 22nd, bank cards of Iran's Shetab system can be used as Amber smart cards in all ATMs across Russia, and Iranian citizens will be able to withdraw rubles from the Russian ATMs using their cards. The second stage will involve the possibility of Russian citizens using their cards to make payments in Iran, while in the third stage, Iranians will be able to pay with a Shetab card in Russian stores via an ordinary bank terminal. Overall, the integration fits into a broader desire for greater independence from Western-dominated institutions that have been espoused at BRICS summits. This includes a shift away from the use of the US dollar as a transaction currency and the development of alternative internet infrastructure. So what are the benefits of this financial integration between Russia and Iran? First, by promoting the use of their own currency for bilateral trade, Iran and Russia seek to minimize the influence of the US dollar and enhance their financial independence. This does not only reduce their vulnerability to US economic policies, but also fosters a multipolar financial system. Secondly, the integration of Russia's and Iran's banking systems is expected to facilitate smoother and more efficient trade transactions between both countries. With the new system, businesses in both countries can open letters of credit, conduct transfers, and issue guarantees more easily, thereby promoting increased trade and investment. Thirdly, the integration will help to enhance strategic geopolitical partnerships. Russia and Iran are both seeking to strengthen their alliance and present a united front against Western geopolitical dominance. So, by collaborating in the financial sector, both countries are showcasing their commitment to supporting each other in the face of Western sanctions and pressure, as well as create a counterbalance to the West's financial hegemony. Fourthly, the new payment system has been designed to provide a more stable and secure framework for financial transactions between the two countries. With this system, the financial transactions of both countries will no longer be disrupted by external political actors, thereby ensuring stability, which is crucial for economic growth. Now, aside from Russia and Iran, the BRICS bloc as a whole has been intensifying efforts to develop a unified interbank payment system that will reduce the reliance on the dollar and enhance financial sovereignty. This system, which is currently in development, is known as BRICS Pay, and it is aimed at integrating all the national payment systems of each BRICS member state. BRICS Pay seeks to create a digital wallet that will facilitate seamless cross-border transactions. Its primary objectives include reducing transaction costs, enhancing security, and minimizing reliance on intermediary currencies like the US dollar. According to reports, BRICS Pay will leverage blockchain technology and central bank digital currencies to ensure an efficient and secure payment process. This means that the system is designed to be decentralized, thereby reducing the risk of system failures and enhancing transparency. The strategic development of BRICS Pay is a significant step towards de-dollarization, providing an alternative to the Western-dominated global financial system. Since 2022, BRICS has grown from an insignificant economic organization to one that is on its way to unseat the dominance of the West. In May, the U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump came out to say that if he wins the U.S. presidential election, he won't allow other countries to abandon the dollar. In his own words, "I don't want people leaving the dollar, and I feel that way, but I will tell you, it has taken on a life. I hate when countries go off the dollar." I would not allow countries to go off the dollar, because when we lose that standard, that will be like losing a revolutionary war. That will be a hit to our country, just like losing a war. And we can't let that happen, and too many countries now are fighting to get off the dollar. In April, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, as well as the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, traveled to China to warn China about supporting Russia. Even French President Macron said in one of his latest speeches that Europe could die and it should stop depending on the United States. All these just point to the fact that the U.S. has just realized that it's about to lose its economic power in the world. And honestly, whatever that is happening and is about to happen to the United States is its fault. So, how does this affect Africa? The use of the dollar by African countries for trade has severely affected their ability to cope with internal challenges because they do not have control over their own monetary policy. According to Ronnie Nkwadi, professor and director of the School of Economics, Development Studies and Tourism at the South African Nelson Mandela University, reliance on the US dollar brings about the external dependency on the stability and policies of the US financial system. In his own words, when the US sneezes, everybody catches the fever, and depending on the US dollar, currency exchange rate does dampen the growth in our African continent. The reliance on the dollar is the reason why the majority of local currencies in Africa are weak and performing poorly, leading to the high cost of living that is now rampant in the African economy. It also makes the African market dominated by commodity products, vulnerable to global economic shocks, leading to inefficient trade. What then is the solution to this problem? It's obvious. Stop using the dollar and start using local currencies for trade, a policy that is currently being advocated by Russia and China under the BRICS alliance. And the best time for African countries to jump onto this train is right now, given that, in recent months, the dollar dominance has become shaky as a result of internal U.S. issues and efforts by Russia and China. According to reports, the U.S. debts have more than doubled over the last decade and currently stands at $32 trillion, which is about more than 123% of the U.S. GDP. This figure is far greater than the combined debts of all African countries put together, which is around $1.8 trillion. Aside from the huge debt figure, several major corporate lenders, including Silicon Valley Bank, have collapsed. Inflation has increased, and confidence in the U.S. Federal Reserve has dropped. Essentially, the American economy is deteriorating. The BRICS alliance has shown no sign of stopping. With Russia and China at the lead, the BRICS alliance is pushing for the adoption of the use of local currencies for bilateral trade by African countries. The reason for this is that Africa has the population and the resources. If every African country adopts the BRICS policy, it would be more than enough to forever shatter the dominance of the US dollar. Interestingly, some African countries have jumped on the trend. In March 2023, Kenya, though pro-Western, signed an agreement with 3 international oil companies, which allowed the companies to buy oil using the Kenya shilling rather than the US dollar. According to the reports from Kenya, this decision has resulted in a monthly saving of 66.8 billion Kenya shilling. In the East African region, the Regional Bloc, EAC, has been working hard at creating a common regional currency known as the East African shilling to facilitate regional trade. The African Continental Free Trade Area has also encouraged those involved to conduct business in their local currencies rather than the dollar. And, to facilitate this process, the ACFTA is in the process of creating a pan-African payment and settlement system similar to the international SWIFT system, which will enable the use of local currencies in trade among African countries. According to the Secretary General of the ACFTA, some members of the EAC have already started using local currencies in regional trade. In addition to this, recently, one of Africa's biggest economies, Nigeria, signed a major trade agreement with India to switch away from using the dollar. According to the agreement, both countries will use their local currencies to conduct bilateral trade in several areas, including energy and transport. Also, Don't forget that several African countries have expressed interest in joining the BRICS alliance. And even though only Egypt and Ethiopia were admitted as members during the last BRICS summit, there is no doubt that more additions would include African countries because Africa is critical to the success of BRICS depolarization campaign. As the years go by, there is no doubt that we will see more African countries join the trend and fight to strengthen their currency against the dollar. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.